other people store user data for our own chatbots. In other words, we want other people to store that data and to be able to access it independently of us. One situation where this can be useful is, for example, let's say Joe, he is our bot creator. He creates a new teaching chatbot, for example, right? And let's say this teaching chatbot becomes so popular that a school, or maybe a few schools, want to use Joe's chatbots in their classes. And each class can have, like, let's say about 40 students, right? So you talk about a lot of different people. Joe can't manage all of these people. He shouldn't, in fact, manage these people. Instead, you want teachers to actually view and collect data and to by their class, and to also be able to manage, in other words, to add or remove new students from classes. So how can we accomplish all these things? Joe, we'll call him a bot creator, and the bot creator has got special privileges because he is the originator, the creator of the chatbot. He can allow teachers to come in to use his bot to collect data for themselves. So the second party that's involved are teachers, and these teachers are data and also user administrators. In other words, they are allowed to view data, plus they can also add or remove students from classes. The basic unit of management here are classes and students. And lastly, students are the data generators. They actually use a chatbot and they might generate, let's say, data from quizzes. So Joe is the chatbot creator. He needs to create groups or classes with their passwords. So each class has got a password. Each group, we call it a group. Each group has got a password associated with it. Okay, and these passwords are obviously secret, but he shares the group and password with the teachers. So let's say if a teacher has got teaching a few classes, then he might share password with those teachers. It is the responsibility of the teachers to actually add users, in this case, who are students, to their groups. So teachers basically manage the groups. And teachers can also view the user scores. In other words, the user data, or let's say in this case, if it's a quiz, it's a score by the group. Now let's look at existing techniques. We've got two existing techniques to actually collect data. The first one I think you're all familiar with is logging. Now, logging, unfortunately, logs are mainly meant for debugging. They're not really meant for this kind of group type data collection. And more importantly, the data from the logs can only be accessed by the bot creator. And you either access all the logs or none of the logs. There's no splitting by class. Okay, so the data is not separated by groups or classes. Now, how about persistent storage, right? So this, unfortunately, also tackles a very different kind of a problem. The first is that the data from persistent storage can only be accessible by each user, right? It's not meant to store data for classes. Also, the other point is that persistent storage is very much attached to the device that you access it from. One person accessing the same chatbot using a handphone versus using a laptop would have two different persistent storage. Persistent storage is not attached to the user, it's attached to the device. So this is also a problem. Whereas in the case of quiz, for example, you want to create something called a user. The other part, obviously, I discussed just now was that data in persistent storage is not, of course, separated by groups. The new data module, this is a new thing that we are doing. Okay, and this is the data module I'm going to demo today and explain today. And I hope that you can actually use it to enhance your bot's capabilities, especially when talking about chatbots which are involved in education. Well, you definitely want to learn and use the new data module, because it's not good enough for a chatbot in education just to teach. You need to test the students and you need to get feedback from the students, in the sense that you need to get feedback from them through tests and so on, so that these can be really can be understood by teachers. They can be actioned by teachers. Okay, and then your bots go from just being a tool, a simple tool just for students, into becoming more complete tool for students and for teachers. In the data module, the data is accessible to bot creators as normal, but also to a new class of users or administrators called teachers. Data is separated by groups. It's by individuals and by groups. And unlike persistent storage, it is not attached to the device. It is attached to a user ID. Bot creators, they first create the chatbot, obviously, but then they would create one or more groups for their bots. And the names of the groups must be unique. It can be anything, but it has to be unique. No spaces. Any other symbols is fine, but it must be unique. Now, once the groups are created with their passwords, the chatbot creators can share that to the appropriate teachers, and the teachers then manage the groups by themselves. Joe is, let's say, a chatbot creator, and let's say Sarah is a teacher. She's got two classes, class 1 and class 2. This is a very small class, 6 students and 3 students, let's say, for example, okay? Because our examples are pretty small. And let's say there's John as well, and he's a teacher, and he's got class number 3, okay? So how do we use the data module for this setup? Well, what happens is, let's say Joe has got a bot. It's called Fabulous Joe / Arithmetica. The chatbot we're talking about is going to teach arithmetic, okay? And Joe wants to let Sarah and John use his chatbots for their classes. Okay, so what he would do is he would create a group called class 1 with a password and class 2 with its own password. So there are 2 different passwords for 2 different classes. Okay, you can see class 1 and class 2 are group IDs. They don't have spaces and they must be unique. Okay, and he shares these. Once he's created the groups, he can share the group name, the group ID, sorry, and the password with Sarah. Similarly, he would also create a class 3 with his password and send it to John as well, okay? And then Sarah would run her own Smojo scripts to add users to these different classes, right? So she's got 2 classes she needs to add users to, whereas John has only 1 class to add users to. Now, the important part to note is that both Sarah and John must also have AutoCAF accounts. We actually protect access to all the data using the AutoCAF security system, right? That's why we need AutoCAF accounts. They also need AutoCAF accounts to run both the user management scripts and also to retrieve the data and to view reports from classes. As a concrete example, I will go through a demo where we talk about an integer arithmetic chatbot. And what this chatbot does is it tests the user on his integer arithmetic. So it's just, you know, like 0 plus 10 or 5 plus 6 and so on, right? Very simple. But it tests the user for 4 different operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and records the scores of the users of the chatbots on all these 4 different kinds of operations and stores them separately. Okay, and so that means that the teachers have a better in-depth understanding. Let's say if this bot were released in a school, for example, then the teachers would have access to the scores for each operation, for each student. The first step is to create the chatbot without any data saving. In other words, this is just an ordinary chatbot. And the second step, obviously, is for Joe. So Joe will create the chatbot, and he would also create groups and passwords for his teachers. Once this is done, he can send the username and passwords. The teachers can then add users to the groups. Okay, so let's see this in action. Okay, so this is the simple quiz bot. I've used the numbers topic. This is already in your system, but I made a small addition to handle negative numbers. There's the same old bad language topic, which you guys know. The new one, of course, is the quiz topic, which is the bulk of the integer arithmetic chatbot. And there's also an unhandled topic just to handle all kinds of, weird and odd queries. All right, there's no data module being used here at all. I'll just publish this bot and let's just give it a whirl. It starts off with a welcome message. It asks the user a question. What is 0 times 2? Let's say the answer is 0, right? Okay, it says, yes, you're right. Okay, how about 9 divided by 8? Now, with integer arithmetic, that would be 1. See, I don't know what the answer is. I type 4 and it says, oops, okay, the answer is something like 3. And how about a 1 divided by 6? I say the answer is 1. And okay, it's wrong. Okay, now let's say I type some rubbish in. It doesn't like it. It just says the answer is -1 and it goes on, right? This bot never ends, okay, and it doesn't really collect data at all. Okay, it just, if you type any rubbish, it will just tell you what the answer is and then we'll go on to the next question. It's fairly straightforward. But the important part is that it's randomly generating these questions, and also the operator is also randomly generated, right? The code is not that hard to understand. It just has 2 templates. The first template checks when the user has typed in an integer. Once he's typing the integer, it determines whether the answer is correct or wrong. If it's right, he says, yes, that's right. And then he just generates the next question. Otherwise, he gives an oops, the answer is the answer. It goes ahead and generates the next question. Let's say the user types anything else. There is a check for operator. Op is the operator like plus, minus, and so on. So 0 means addition, 1 means subtraction, 2 means multiplication, and 3 means division. Integer division can be a bit tricky for some people because let's say 1 divided by 6 in integer division would be 0. Okay, so unless you know this, you get tripped up. So whenever you have integer division, the bot, it's courteous enough to remind the user to use integer division before giving them the answer and the next question. In the case where he types in some rubbish, all it says is the answer is this, what about something else, a different question. We've done step one. And step one is that we've got a bot, a quiz bot, which doesn't collect data, but just does what we want it to do. So the first step is for us to be able to add new users. So the way you do it is very simple. Okay, I'm going to an admin folder, and in the admin folder, the first thing we want to do is to create the groups, right? This is self-contained, and you can see there's no buttons here anymore. You have to click on the play. It will run this as a script. This import here for this module, it's called Terra Chat Data Admin. It's called admin because you are administering this bot. You need to supply the bot name. In this case, the name of my bot is just bot. Okay, so it's just called bot. And then here, for each group that you want to create, you say group : the space, the group ID or group name, followed by the password. So these two might be for Sarah. Let's say I create a third one, and it would be for that guy, John, okay? And all I got to do is just run this. Okay, that's it. All right, it's simple as that. Given the wrong name here, the bot doesn't exist, and you might have others. Also, if you try and put the same name, let's say group 2 like that, all this does is just to overwrite the password for class number 2. So don't do that. Each of the names must be unique, and they must not have any spaces. All right, that's it. So this is all that the bot creator has to do in order to create the groups with their passwords, right? Group name, password, and so on. Very straightforward. Once he's done that, he would typically share this information with teachers, or if he is helpful enough, he might also want to help out the teachers as well, right? To create users for them. But most of the time, the teachers want to do it themselves. So this is the script that the bot creator would actually share with teachers. Because this bot is being managed by teachers, instead of having the bot name just being bot, it needs to be fully qualified. So in this case, it must be Arnold/bot because it's my bot under my username. Okay, he needs to log in. The teacher needs to log in with the class, with the group name and the password, and then he begins to just add the users. Users don't have passwords to them; it's just usernames. All right, and you can have as many usernames here as you want. Let's say, I can call it, let's say, user 24, or give it some other name. Let's say Sally 1 or something like that. Okay, and as long as this is correct, in other words, on Arnold bot, there is a class 1 with a password ABCDEF, then this would definitely work. Okay, we just say okay, no errors. Okay, if we made some mistake in the password, then you'd get an error. This script will be shared with the teachers. Okay, so now is the hard part, which is step 4. So step 1 is to create the bot. Step 2 is to create the groups. Then you share the groups with your teachers, and then they will create the users. And step 4 is where you want to amend this chatbot to include data saving. It means that first, the chatbot needs to collect the users, or he has to know what the user ID is, the username is, and to which group is this chatbot going to save data to. So those 2 questions need to be answered. And then once that's answered, the data then needs to be saved, checked, and so on. So there's 2 parts to it. You first need to get the group to which the user belongs to and the username. And then the second stage is where, once that happens, you want to actually save the data. There are 3 words that your bot will use frequently to save the data. The first one is that you want to have a user check just to see whether the user really exists or not. Maybe the user gave a wrong username in the wrong group. So that's what user question mark word does. Okay, it takes in the username and the group and it gives you back a flag, a Boolean value which is true or false. So F means flag, which is true or false. The two real words are data exclamation mark, which is data store, and data at, which is data fetch. Okay, so data store and data fetch. All right, so let's go into these two words. So to save data, you use a data store. Okay, data exclamation mark. And it takes in 4 arguments. Of course, you have the username and the group because you need to know where to store it on and to who do you want to store it for. The implied thing is that it obviously will be stored for this particular bot. The K is an integer and it must range from 0 to 39. There are only 40 slots basically into which you can save data, only 40 slots. And the V must be, or the V user value must be a number. It can be an integer, it can be a real, it must be a number. So you can't store strings, you can't store complicated data objects. It will all cause errors. So the data at, basically it takes the username and the group and it gives you a tuple. The tuple is an array of numbers and there are 40 numbers in the array. Before we go on, let me give you a demo. We have the basic chatbot here. We are going to first comment out the quizzes, which is our original chatbot without the data saving parts. We want to also include Terra Chat Data User. Previously, we had admin to actually administrate the groups and the users, but now we have the Chat Data User. And what this does, it imports all the words that are required, the 3 words, the user, question mark, data store, and data fetch. You also would have to have a topics user. Okay, so what topics user is going to do, it collects the username and the group ID, and if the login is okay, in other words, and if this username exists for this group, for this bot, then login okay will be true. And we put all our code here to just manage all of that process into one convenient file. Okay, so this is just for user management. It also has access to data exclamation mark with data store and data fetch. And it does things like checking for, if the user supplied a wrong username or a wrong group. There also needs to be a login as well, right? So what the login does is at the first, instead of just straight away asking the user, what is 1 + 1 and so on, the login has got a simple question, right? And the function of the login is basically just to make sure that the user at the very start has entered the correct username. Let me just try these 2 things out. I will publish the bot again. Oops. So it doesn't like that. No, I think it needs the whole lot. Okay, so that's success there. Let's just give it a shot. You see here, instead of just straight away going into the question, 1 + 1 is what, it asks you for a group ID. Now, if you recall, we had some group IDs created. Under the admin folder, we have some groups and we have some users. I'm going to use class 1. And let's say I log in as user 6, okay? Class 01 and user 06, okay? Oh, it says invalid login. I'm sure you've seen it just now. I put a typo. It should be CLASS 01 and user 06, okay? And now it's fine. It logs in. So it says you are logged in with user 06 and class 1. And let's start. And then it starts to actually begin the main part of the quiz. What I've done here is to protect access to the quiz. The login is outside in its own default room, but the quiz is protected with a room. What scores does, it just simply gets the user scores. You want to save that into the database. Quiz with scores, it's the updated quiz with the scoring functions. Let's look at that. It is very similar to the old quiz, except that you want to add the scores. That's it. Okay. And of course, there might be few differences because we are no longer starting with a quiz. And also, we can also get the user to see the results of his own test. So let's try this out, okay? So I'm in user 6 in class 1, right? So what is 2 divided by 9? The answer would be 0, all right? Or you can say 0. Okay, how about 9 minus 8? Let's say that I say the answer is 1. 4 plus 6, answer is 10. 2 minus 8, let's say I did a mistake and I say it's 6. Okay, so it's minus 6. And let's say 9 times 2, let's say I say 16 instead of 18. At this point, if I type any rubbish here, previously the bot would just go on and say, you know, the answer is this, you know, try something else. But now I've made it so that it instead I put a new template in, so that it will report the scores for me. I've got the totals and I've got also the scores by the different kinds of operations. All right, so if I type in, yeah, I want to continue, then it'll go on. Okay, so minus, let's say minus 2, for example, right? Now here, if I type let's go or some other rubbish, okay, it will then update the subtraction because I had a mistake here. This is very much like persistent storage, if you know what persistent storage is all about. But it's very different because for this system with a data module, you are actually storing data by the group ID and also by the user ID. So if I, let's say now try it with my handphone, and I type scores, I would get the exact same answers. I wouldn't get a blank score. It would give me the correct answers. Because it's very important for classrooms and so on. A lot of students might, you know, try the quizzes at home, or let's say they might try it somewhere else, or they might move from laptop to somewhere else. They need to store data on the same place, which is the user ID, right? Not in different devices, like persistent storage. So persistent storage has its uses, but it's not useful to create data stores like this. Let's say these students go out there, they're given their user. So the teacher obviously has to tell the students what their class ID is, and the teacher also has to tell the students what their username is, okay? And of course, this should be kept secret. Now the teachers want to have a dashboard, right, where they can actually see the results of the quiz, right? How many students actually did well, you know, what are the breakdown by students, etc., right? So for this, the teacher needs to do 2 things. The first thing is that the teacher needs to log into the group for that bot. And we have got 2 words for that. The first one, which you can use in compilation mode, is called group login. And it's got the group and the password, and then it's logged in or not. And there's group login colon, which you can only use in interpretation mode. So group login, the first one is within a word. Group dash login colon can be used outside a word. After they've logged in, after the teacher has logged into the group, then they can start to retrieve data. And it's only one function, it's just get data, right? And get data retrieves a hash or null. Null means, you know, something wrong, something bad happened, and there was no data, for example, right? Or maybe because there's no users, right? It's possible, for example, the teacher forgot to put in the user or create users for the group. Then, of course, you'll get a null or perhaps an empty hash. The format of the hash is always the username followed by a data tuple. All right, the tuple is again an array, and it only has 40 slots, 40 places inside of it. Now, if you want to know more about hashes and tuples, there is a tutorial for you, a basics section. The important part again, before you can use get data, the teachers need to log into the group first. So then, in other words, they need to know what the group name is and what the group password is. All right, so let me just review this again. So you got teacher Sarah. Okay, she's got 2 classes, and obviously she needs an AutoCAD account because all of this stuff is going to happen. I mean, the data analysis and reporting is going to happen within AutoCAD itself. We assume that she has the groups and passwords, group names and passwords for herself, right? So there's class 1 with its password. She will then call data, get data to actually extract the results, and then she can display the results in a report, right? Or she can call class 2 plus a password, and same thing, she can call get data and see the results for class 2. Let's have a simple short demo. This code is not seen by, or it doesn't have to be seen by the bot creator. He can create this code for convenience, but this code will be run no longer. So it's not the bot code anymore, it's separate, right? And it's got its own main. I've created a simple main, and I've created some functions here. You can view it for all classes. Class number one, I can create I'll create a button for class number two later on. This is Sarah's dashboard, right? And Sarah can also download the data. Okay. So again, let me just go through here. Sarah needs to fill in the bot names. In her case, just previously in the slides, it was Fabulous Joe / Arithmetica, but here it's just Arnold / bot, right? And then there's the classes, class one and class two, and their passwords for both of these classes. Okay, I've created three functions here: report all, report for class one, and download data, which downloads all the data that is available into CSV format. Okay, so let's try the all classes button first. All right, so this would then report all the classes, data for all the classes. So you can see just now, for class one, user one has got these scores, user two has got these scores, user 3, 4, and 5 have got zeros, but that doesn't mean that they failed. Okay, it simply means, it could also mean that they didn't try, they didn't enter the system. So actually you need more reporting here to show how many questions were shown, for example, right? So, or maybe instead of 47, a better display might be they got, let's say, X out of Y. Let's say, is it 10 out of 20 or 50 out of 60 and so on, right? Showing the breakdown will also be very helpful. Okay, otherwise the teacher can't tell here, this display alone, all the data is available, right? But what's displayed is up to the teacher to want to display, and it would depend on the reporting code. So I've got a report here, code here, which does the display. It's not the best, it's just a very simple thing, but it might not be the best way of doing it. I encourage you, once you get the whole of the source code, to actually try and make it so that instead of displaying 47 and so on, it also displays, maybe in brackets, how many questions the user attempt and how many did they get them right. And this is the results for user 6. You saw just now from the bot itself, there was 67 for the subtraction, 100 for the plus, and of course 0 and 0 because I didn't get anything there correct, right? And here for class 2, there are no users, so it's just blank. Let's create some users here. Let's see what happens. So let's go back to our admin and users. If I can create, I need to log in first to the group, and I need to add users there. I add 3 users here for class 2. Okay, I run this. Oops, I think the password is wrong, perhaps. A, B, C, D, E, F. Let me check the password again. That's correct. Let's try commenting these out and see if it works. Oh, I think I know what's wrong. It means that this, I was playing around just now. I think I deleted one of the groups, right? So let me just do this again. Save this, run this here. Okay, I hope this runs this time. Otherwise, yeah, it runs now. Okay, so I think I was playing around with it just now. I deleted this group, right? Okay, so try that again. It should work still. All right, so that works. So now when you go back now to the reporting, if I click on all classes now, right, it will report. You can see for class 2, there are 3 users here. The only function I've actually used is really the get data function. First, you need to log in and then you call get data. So the reporting code does all of that stuff for you behind the scenes. Let's say I want to just call it for class 1. You can call it for class 1 here. Again, all of this stuff is completely customizable, right? Because all the code is here, right? It's very simple to use, and you should be able to just hack this stuff and create whatever kind of display that you want. All right, nothing too complicated. All right, so let's try now. Let's say we want to download the data. Let me just delete these files here. And let me just do a download. All right, if I call download data, it will say, download to class 1 and class 2. And then you can see the data in CSV format. So your familiar CSV format is something that you can actually just cut and paste, actually place this into something like Excel to actually view or to chart and so on. Okay, so it can be exported as well. Let me show you one last trick. Let's say I want to add a button for class 2. How do I do that? What I do is I just go to UI words.json, right? I create a new button here. Right, it's called class 2. And I say report for class 2, right? Save that. Then I just copy this word here. Class 2. This is class 2, and the password for class 2 is this thing here, right? And then you got class 2. There is a sample code in CU102.